Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. In this episode, I speak with Dean, a current mentee in the Parsity Inner Circle program, about the good, the bad, and the ugly of internships. Now at Parsity, we've been experimenting with internships. We've been doing so for the last year and a half or more, and they've been really great as far as moving the needle with getting people the experience they need to make them sound like less of a risk in the market by teaching them the skills that they'll actually need on the job. They're also really demanding, and while they can turn into actual offers or give people the experience that's great to put down on paper, they are not easy. I asked Dean about his experience in this particular internship, which was very intense, using a modern tech stack, and what he really thought about it, and what you can probably learn from this too if you're considering going down that path. So whether you're considering joining something like Parsity or just doing an internship on your own, I think you're going to find a lot of value in this episode. I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's get right to it. Today on the Develop Yourself podcast, I have Dean, who's a current mentee in Parsity's Inner Circle. Can you just briefly tell us a little bit about, what led you into coding?
I'm originally from South Africa, and I moved here in 2019 to get married. And I was in the IT field back in South Africa, and I just got completely burnt out on the field. So I got into a cabinet building company, and then we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I ended up at a framing shop building picture frames. And one day I woke up and I thought, is this my career? Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to do when I have a family and kids and my wife wants to stay home? And no, what am I going to do in 5 years? Am I just going to be incrementally earning an extra 50 cents a year or whatever?
Yeah.
So then I thought I could get back into IT, but man, I really just don't want to do that. And I've always kind of avoided coding, thinking it's I mentioned this to Zubin. I always thought it was kind of for the clever people in IT, and then the not so clever people were doing support, fixing printers and stuff. His analogy is if you get in the car and in New York and you want to go to LA, you still got to go west. If you go east, you're not going to get there. No matter how fast I was getting on a plane, then the plane wasn't landing where I needed to be, and then I was getting on a train and So I just decided, and my initial reaction, and I think a lot of people is when you guys say, it's going to be a year, sometimes at least, the initial reaction is, I don't want to wait a year in my job. I hate my job. But then I thought back, the first time I started a coding tutorial was 2.5 years ago. How different could my life be right now if I just committed? I was you know what, a year is nothing. Let's do it.
Very cool. I'm a lot of what you're saying resonates with me. I was thinking the same thing. I kind of cleaned up my life before I learned to code, and then I was on Code Academy, and I'm thinking, cool. And I'm thinking also in the back of my head, if I stay in this job I'm currently at, and it was a nice, safe job with a union or whatever in a school, and think I'll get this tiny little raise every year. I'll never really get what I want. And also I wasn't happy. I like coding. I assume you do too. And I've actually reviewed some of your code, and I got to tell you, it's really good. I review a lot of code, and I'm reviewing a lot of the code on this project, and I'm impressed. You came from a very non-traditional background, like everybody that I've talked to on this show, basically, but you're doing a hell of a job. It's pretty amazing.
Thanks.
But I also know that this internship has been pretty difficult. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
It's I've been leveraging some LLM work and trying to integrate that with what I'm doing. Never copy pasting stuff I don't understand. Golden rule.
Oh, that's right. And, there you go.
Yeah, it's been a good challenge, and I'm glad I learned it in an internship and not in something that's really high stakes or something that would have hurt me a lot more. So I'm glad I went through that.
That's awesome. And I know that you're being very diplomatic, but most software engineers, especially those of us that have worked for a while, we've written lots of code or little bits of code, but sometimes a lot. And then you find that you've done all this work and it gets thrown out the door pretty unceremoniously, usually. It's not uncommon. I've worked on teams big and small where you do maybe a large project, hey, we want you to integrate this thing. The marketing team wants you to integrate something. And then you do it. You struggle with it. And you're it's finally ready. And then you hear, you know what? We're going to go with something else. That basically happened to you on this team. And I'm sure that was probably surprising to you, right? You're thinking what the hell? I spent all this time working on this thing, and now you don't even want it. This is a really small startup, by the way. But yeah, it's not a great feeling, right? To feel like, hey, I've done all this work now. But you reframe this a bit. I know it's not easy. We all get attached to the code we write. But if somebody that didn't code or worked on a team, they heard that, they'd be like, well, what was the point of that? Like, how do you kind of reconcile that in your mind and think about the benefit that it provided you, even though it's not going to ultimately go out to the public?
I mean, I'm in a unique position where I'm learning. And I mean,
Hmm.
I know that'll always be the case. It's not that I'm going to learn now and then I'm not going to learn. I'm just going to know things. But having gone through that, doing all the problem solving, doing all the debugging and all that stuff, I mean, there's just no way that's a waste. Like, just because it's not on a website somewhere, it doesn't mean it was a waste. It doesn't mean that, like, I didn't learn stuff. I didn't struggle through things that I'm not going to struggle through next time. Like,
Hmm.
I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about what not to do as well. I learned a lot about what questions I should have asked instead of just maybe not assuming that, like, giving myself a little bit of credit. It was a
Hmm.
fair assumption. It wasn't that I just, like, didn't want to ask questions. It's just I didn't know exactly what questions to ask, and I think that was a lesson that I learned from that was okay. Even if you get this stuff that you think is your target, clarify some things. Is this
Oh, yeah.
exactly what you want, or is this a guideline? And
Yep.
just little things like that. I mean, especially where I'm at learning, like, I can't get enough reps in. So just
Yeah.
doing all that was like, I mean, it was different a week ago. I was a little more like, yes, but
Yeah.
having sat with it and really thought about it, like, I'm still stoked I did it. I don't think it was a waste of my time. Like, the code might, technically be a waste, as in not being used, but
For sure.
it wasn't a waste for me.
Yeah, like we write code all the time. Like think about like the code you might write for the inner circle, like the projects you're doing that will probably never see the daylight, right? Like the
Yeah.
light, but they're incredibly important because you learn a ton on them. And I think you hit on a really important topic too, like communication. That often what happens on teams, and everybody's seen this as well, that's worked in software for a bit, you have different expectations. Somebody hands you something or they say something, and you think you kind of have an idea in your head of what should be built, and then somebody else has an idea in their head of what should be built. And then at some point there's a mismatch that occurs when you're like, here, I got this thing, and they're like expecting a dog house and you built like a doll house, type of
But you both
scenario.
think you understand each other. So
Yes,
you don't, it's
exactly.
almost like you don't think to ask the questions because you think you
Uh-huh.
understand it.
Exactly. What was like one of the biggest things that was surprising to you going from, doing all this work in Inner Circle and more on your own in a solo setting to working on a team?
I don't know if this is surprising more than it was a bigger challenge than I thought. So yeah, maybe I was surprised by the difference in this, where a lot of the stuff we're doing in our learning process is from scratch. So I'm creating the app, I'm building the pages, I'm linking everything up, and now getting,
Hmm.
like, here's the code, add to it, use the connections we've made, and all that stuff. And I knew that was going to be the job. I knew I wasn't going to be creating, create next app from scratch and do all this stuff the way I want to do it and as neat and tidy as I want to do it.
Yeah.
But you can't know how different that is until you do it. So getting a code base and then saying, like, okay, use what we have and make it work. And then it's like, well, can I change the file structure, or do I have to use this file structure? Like, can I add some utilities in this workplace, or do I need to put it, just that kind of stuff was a lot more different than I expected. And maybe that was
Yeah.
being a little naive, but I'm, to my credit, like, I don't know. It's my first time, so
Of course. Yeah.
that was really great to experience in this context as well.
That's cool to hear. And that's, yeah, a lot of the questions that I heard from you and other people in there were things that I often take for granted or just kind of become second nature to me. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, how do I know that? I don't know that just because I woke up and know it. I think I know that
Mhm.
after writing tons of code for tons of different applications and on different teams and things like that. What were some things about working with a team that you found either more difficult or more enjoyable than working solo?
So there's definitely both for me. More
Okay. Yeah, for
difficult.
sure.
I've realized I do not want a remote job as much as possible. Um, it's been really difficult. And the extra challenge for
Hmm.
me is that it's all after hours for me. Like, I have a
Oh,
day
yeah.
job. So um, I'm down and working when everyone else is kind of in their downtime. So that's been a little challenging, getting replies during the workday and replying at night and then getting replies during the next workday. And, that's just a logistical challenge that I won't have in the future, even working remotely. We'll all be working at the same time and that kind of stuff. But for this thing, that's been a bit of a challenge. So there's some logistic stuff around working remotely.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot
sure.
of questions I had, if I could have just turned around and, hey, what's this thing? Okay,
Like, hey,
cool.
man.
And just
Yeah,
carried
exactly.
on working. Yeah, I mean, that's invaluable, especially for me coming in so green. Like, to be able to just ask those questions and get a response immediately, and it's not actually stopping my flow, is like invaluable. And yes, I understand if I do work remotely, that'll be easier when we're both on the same schedule. But that's been probably the hardest thing, is just aligning work times and dealing with that discrepancy.
Yes.
And on the flip side of that, the plus sides of working in a team is there's been a couple of guys who I've really enjoyed bouncing stuff off and just talking through, and like we'll hop on like once a week and just talk about, either vent on the frustrations we share, or like I'll vent on something and he'll go, I actually looked that up and here's a quick response. I'm like, oh, man, I just overlooked that. That's great. And vice versa, being able to just bounce ideas off someone has been really cool. Whereas when it's just me and an AI, maybe it's like you don't get that same bounce, you don't get that same relationship. And it's been really cool doing that with someone, because all my inner circle stuff has been just me, and I mean, you guys with feedback and stuff, but on the day to day, like I'm writing the code. It's just me. And
yeah, exactly.
That's been really cool.
It's hard to mimic that experience. Like, there's really nothing like the experience of being in just a really like messy situation, honestly, which is kind of what we all get into on that first day of work. Like, this is about as close to what you'll experience on a first day of work. Obviously much more intense, because you're trying to juggle your job and this at the same time, which is pretty amazing, and dealing with all these new tools. It's interesting though that from the challenges you've been talking about, none of them seem to have to do with code. It seems mostly around like the processes and like the norms and the work culture. But I'm curious, was there any like code related stuff where you're like, oh wow, this code is so different, for example? Like, when you looked at this code base, which is moderately complex and pretty big, it's bigger than most code bases you've probably worked on so far. Yeah. So was there anything you looked and said, wow, this is like completely foreign to me? Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and if you're interested in becoming a software developer, learning how to build complex software, and actually get hired, join me at Parsity.io. If you're serious about joining, just schedule a call with me by clicking the link in the show notes below.
I will say, being able to ask like ChatGPT about type stuff has been very helpful, because it can be a rabbit hole. Especially when you use a type across a whole bunch of different components, and then you start you change one thing and then you get a whole bunch of red things on the side of your Explorer. Everything just goes red, and you've got to trace like where you use that thing. So, but I like TypeScript. Once you get going with it, I really like it. I'm really enjoying the safety of it. But it's definitely a challenge. It's like, if a friend of mine described it to me once, he said, like, because he's a Ruby guy and he was learning JavaScript. He said, man, it's just so much typing. And then I looked at TypeScript, and it was like the guy who made JavaScript was like, let's just add more typing to it.
Let's add more types,
but I mean, like, actual typing,
like 1 or 2 lines, more lines, like more characters for like the same function. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. But it saves you in the back end with debugging, not back end as in coding back end, but I mean on the back side of it, where it's like you're not debugging as much. So I am really enjoying it.
I'll be honest with you. I hated TypeScript for a long time, and I got forced to use it basically in a similar type of application that you're building for work at a startup that I was working at recently, and I had to use TypeScript. And this place had TypeScript people that like really knew TypeScript. I thought I knew TypeScript, but then I was having the same issues you're having. And I think it's really cool that you're getting to experience that a little bit earlier. And I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it, because it took me months before I was like, I don't want to do, why can't we just do this in JavaScript? Be so much faster. But I see what you're saying, because you change a type one place and it breaks across multiple files. So you immediately get that feedback that like, hey, something's wrong. And if you
Yeah.
had that in JavaScript, you wouldn't. You'd probably find out
Oh,
later,
yeah.
like, oh yeah, there's something I
You'd run it, and then
broke
the console
way
log
down
would
the
say there's a
line.
problem here, and then you go fix that, and you run it again. The console log would say there's a problem here, and then it's just like endlessly chasing.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a really cool observation, or that's a cool like epiphany though. Like, you did a tutorial like that it was Next.js. The cool thing about Next.js or like React is it's not that different, right?
Hmm.
Like you can only write a component or have a use effect or use state like in a few different ways. It's not like completely a black box of things.
Yeah.
Lastly, on the technical side, how did you feel using Git? This is like generally the area where people have the most trouble.
I did it the right way, and it's been so nice and smooth. I'm still, learning the pull requests and stuff, and how to
Hmm.
manage that, and manage not only just submitting it, but dealing with the comments coming back and all that stuff. So I'm still learning,
Yeah.
but it's been cool. Again, it's nice to learn on a. I'm not saying there's no stakes, but it's like,
Yeah, it's lower stakes for sure.
yeah, it's an internship. We're,
Right.
we're here to
Yeah, it's an
learn, and
internship.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, not saying their code's not important, but I'm saying like, um, yeah. I mean, I think you get what I'm saying. It's not like this is my
Of
day
course.
job, and like, yeah, the stakes are just different. I wouldn't say they're lower; they're just kind of different.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it's like you're providing a service for free, and they're kind of
Hmm.
like saying, "Hey, like we're gonna teach you and be more patient than if we were, paying you. We expect, like, hey, this has to be done by XYZ date." Even though, if I'm being honest, there's a little bit of pressure, obviously, in every internship
Yeah.
to ship code at a certain point. I know a lot of people that are listening to this, especially if they're earlier in their career, and they're probably like scared. Or if you've started a new job, I know you're feeling this. You look in a code base. There's actually some people in Parsity that got hired recently, and they're staring at a big, massive code base, kind of like what you had happen. How did you navigate the code base when you started it? Like, how did you know, like, oh, there's this repo and there's like 100 or more files. Where do I start? Did you have a process for doing that?
Um, I mean, I think I did. It wasn't really glamorous. I just found the repo that they're working in, and I just try and find the first entry point, like the
Yeah.
src app page.tsx, and then go, okay, what does that render? And then you
Hmm.
command click on that, and it opens that. And then I just kind of followed the rabbit hole as far as I needed to go for that moment. Like I I learned, like, I don't need to understand this whole thing right now. I need to
Yeah.
understand what I need to do. I need to understand what I need to do my job. And when that my job will inevitably rely on some other jobs, and I'll look into those. But there's some stuff in the code that I didn't really dive into, because that's some back end stuff that I'm not.
Yeah.
I get handed an endpoint and then I use it. I don't need to know how that works. I don't need to spend time drilling down into. And now I might on my own personal time for me to learn about it, but for what I need to produce, I don't need to know that. So I try not to get overwhelmed with like the amount of stuff in there that I don't need to know
Hmm.
for what I'm doing, but I would like to know it. I like knowing the bigger picture of what's going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just how I approached it. And then kind of just started learning about things as I needed them. Like, oh, I need to go into this actions file to create some stuff that the backend guys didn't do. Like, okay, let me see
Hmm.
what they've done and the documentation, and see how I need to do that. But slowly, I think, would be my answer. Like, don't just try and understand the whole big picture. Just get a page up and running, and then see what
Yeah.
happens. And like, oh, if I click here, it
That's
goes there. Let me
exactly
find
the
that
way I
in the
do it.
code. Like, how does that
Hmm.
link up and stuff?
Oh yeah, that's the process I've been using for years. Whether it's like an API or a front end application or full stack, or whatever, I do just what you said, like find an entry point, and then I eventually will ask for some sort of task to do. Like if they don't
Mm-hmm.
give me one off the bat, usually the company, I'll try to make an entrance by saying, "Hey, I really want something to do. Give me something," and that'll be like my first little foothold that I can get into the code base.
Mm-hmm.
Which really cool, I think, about this whole experience is like now we're talking the same language, which I think is really cool. Because now in an interview, when you go into one, you now immediately have that kind of like that rapport with somebody, and also that validation where they're like where you
Mm-hmm.
kind of are speaking the same language and you understand those same experiences that somebody that's written code in a professional setting has done.
Yeah. And I've got star
Yeah.
stories as well, for all those kind
Yeah.
of
Oh
questions.
yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
But one thing, I
It's
want to
really
go
great
back
how
to
that
the
works.
the
Mhm.
Git answer quick. Like, and all the
Oh
stuff that
yeah.
I said about how scary all that is. I mean, yeah,
No,
there's a
it's
few
really not.
commands you can run that are like destructive. But generally, if you stay away from those, like, yeah, if I push something to main that shouldn't be there, they can just revert back. Like,
We'll
it's
revert
not
it
as
back. Yeah.
scary as it like comes across. So I've had to keep telling myself that. But like I said, when there's things like force and hard, I'm just like, am I going to break something here or am I good?
Yeah. I
But
still
yeah.
get those feelings. I'll be honest.
And I don't know if this was your
Yeah.
feeling, but sometimes when that happens and you feel like, oh my gosh, I've messed up, I'm fired, this is the end of the
Yep.
world. Some guy just
I'm
walks in and goes,
fired.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine, tick, tick, and then solves the problem.
Yeah,
And
right.
you're like, I want to get there. I want to know that guy's like chill of just like, okay.
I became that guy at one company. That was great. That was a great feeling when I
Mm.
went from like being the person that had to rely on a person to come do that. And then at some point I became the person that was like helping out more junior people. And that was a great feeling because
Yeah.
everybody gets into a bit of trouble with Git. Because honestly, like the dirty secret is most people don't know Git very well beyond Git add, Git commit, Git push. And when they have to do anything outside of that flow, and I'm talking about people that have been working in software for a while. I mean, I've seen this and they like completely get blown apart when they have to do something else like a git revert. What if I have to revert the revert? And then all these other interesting things that pop up. You know, we talked about using large language models, AI with coding.
But you know, I'm not going to take my whole code base and paste it in and say, here's my context. You know, do this thing. Like, no, it's helping me
Right.
with individual tasks instead of the whole task, like individual smaller tasks, and just making things a lot quicker. And then, as I say, like whenever if I do end up copy pasting stuff, which still feels icky to me, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I'm still going through it and thinking like, okay, is this calling the wrong function? Is this pointing to the wrong thing? And it has sometimes that I haven't caught it, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm refreshing. Why is this not working?
Mhm.
Like the code's right, the console log is right, like everything's good, and I see like one little letter that got left out because I changed something, and like just stuff like
Oops.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
And you learn that once, and then you check it again, and yeah, it's been a learning curve for sure, and I definitely want to tone back in my personal stuff with it. But I'm glad I've had the experience and the bad experiences of using it right now.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to get bitten. I mean, you can't cheat time in the saddle is my big takeaway. Like there's certain things you just have to experience. And I think that's kind of the magic of doing these internships, or even like just figuring out like, what do you want? What is in your head that you want me to make with code, and figuring out how to do that effectively. If you were, if you have advice for people, like what would you say to people that are out there that are considering doing an internship or doing some sort of freelance work? Do you have like any kind of generic advice or things that you wish you had known before starting an internship?
Well, this is advice, but it's not that I wish I'd known, it's that I did know, and I didn't. I did it, but not as much as I should have. It's just ask questions. Like, even if you think you know what it is, just double check. Say, hey, this is what I understand from here. Am I on the right track? So yeah, I mean, for me, as I said, there were some questions I didn't know to ask, but what I should have done is what I just said. Like, before I got started, hey, you sent me this thing. I'm assuming this is what you want. I'm going to go ahead and make this, correct? And they'll say yes, or actually no, sorry, we should have said, this is a guideline, or this is a whatever. So just asking questions, like a lot of questions. And I think, it's okay to overcommit to a certain point, but I think at some point, like if they've given you an amount of time per week, try and stick to it. It's okay to go the extra mile every now and then, but find that balance, I think, of not sacrificing your own personal stuff for over committing and like burning out on it. It's a hard balance. I get it, because like you want to make a good impression, you want to do good code, and sometimes where you're at, that good code can't be done in the time they give you based on your level. I get that, and I've struggled with that, but I've also had a couple of weeks where I've put way more time in that's been good for me personally. So it's just about finding that balance. But asking questions, I think, is the main thing. Like, just don't be shy to ask questions and pester people if they're not getting back to you.
I love that. Cause I've learned both those lessons, and those are two lessons, honestly, I find myself learning all the time. Unfortunately, every single time I start a new job, I tend to do both these things. I don't ask questions because I want to appear either competent or I'm just nervous or I think I understand something I don't, and I'm still learning the people. And then I tend to go overboard in order to get something done in the amount of time that I think it should get done, or because I want to make a good impression. And I end up spending these marathon sessions. It's not sustainable, and it's hard. It's really difficult to know your limit and to stick to it. But those are really important takeaways. You've done a hell of a job on the internship, by the way. Just really top notch. It's been awesome watching not only the code you've written, but just I've done a few PRs, pull reviews, pull requests in this particular repo, and it is impressive. And the people at this business, Founding Titans, by the way, I don't think it's a secret, but they've been overall very impressed with the work that Parsity mentees have been doing as well. So really cool. Thank you for telling us about it and keeping it real. And if people do want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I am on LinkedIn. I don't know my user handle particular, but Dean Fox from Knoxville, Tennessee. Cool. I'm also on all the things, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. I don't know my handles because I'm not an influencer. But
we'll get them in the show notes. We'll put them in the show notes if you're so inclined. We'll add those in there. But yeah, thank you.
I'm not super active on social media, but go ahead.
We'll add them in just in case. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.